This episode of the Leap Forward podcast is brought to you by Bridge LT, leaders in conversational learning and innovation. Through AI role plays, technical simulators, and comprehensive training programs, Bridge LT is revolutionizing the future of corporate and enterprise education.
On this episode of Leap Forward, we speak with Greg Pyle, Strategic Leadership of Global ATS and Managing Director of Micronav, a company in the market of air traffic control simulation. He shares insights on the industry's future, including the role of AI in aviation and the increasing global demand for automation. Join us as we explore the future of aviation from a unique perspective.
A very, very warm, and I think warm is the appropriate word, welcome to Greg Pyle to this edition of Leap Forward. Greg, thank you so much for joining us today.
Oh, it's a real pleasure to be here. This is my first podcast, but yeah, I'm looking forward to the conversation.
You are currently, I believe, is your title still Managing Director?
I am Managing Director, yes.
Of Micronav.
Yeah.
So give us a bit of an overview of Micronav. What sets the business apart in the world of air traffic control simulation? And then let's talk about your role. What do you actually do there personally?
Okay, so Micronav is a very niche market, or a very niche company in a very niche market. The world of air traffic simulation. There's about 7 competitors in the industry, and what we do is we essentially use gaming technology on Windows platforms to create training environments for air traffic control. All of the disciplines, from somebody who wants to do a simple single runway operation with Cessnas and a grass strip, up to Dubai Airport, the full hub airport operation, and all of the airspace operations that go around that as well. So radar approach services, en route simulation, and then we also have a capability in the military market as well. So we do fighter control, air battle management, and we support militaries for some of their other fast jet operations.
And what's the role that you play as MD in that business?
It's a multi-hatted role, actually. We're a relatively small company. Micronav is about 75 people. And there's a team of really good engineers that build the product. I came in, I used to be a customer, actually. That's how it started. So the founder of the company was looking for retirement. He asked me to come in as an ops director. That was about 7 years ago. And also with the view that the company needed to grow. The industry was starting to mature, and they were looking for different things from a company of that type. And he recognized that it needed a slightly different style. So I was brought in as the ops director to try and get a little bit more corporate with the way that it's operating, but also to try and make sure that we were ready for the expansion. So I came in as a subject matter expert of air traffic management and also of people management based on my background. And yeah, my role is to help to guide the business and not get in the weeds too much, which can be difficult when you're a subject matter expert of the way the product is used in the field, but also to try and develop people. That's the goal,
So you came in as a customer, and you just used the phrase there, background. Walk us through some of those kind of key turning points that actually brought you to Micronav.
So I started out as a pilot. Trained as a commercial pilot. The timing was bad though. So 9/11 came along, and I was just coming into the market, and then that was at a point where people with relatively good experience were going after very low-paid entry-level jobs in the flight industry, and that's just the way the world was at that moment. And I had a wife with a baby on the way, and I couldn't not work. So I ended up getting a job with a company called Skyguide, which is the company in Switzerland that does they're the air navigation service provider for Switzerland. And they had a requirement in those days for people to help to run the simulators with a role that they call a pseudo-pilot. And a pseudo-pilot is a person, and it's an actor in the game of simulation, where that person controls 10 to 15 aircraft in a simulator, which is then training a live air traffic controller. And their requirement was you had to have a commercial pilot's license or equivalent experience to gain entry to that role. So I thought, all right, I'll try this for a few months because the money's not bad and it tides me over. And I fell in love with simulation. They had an entry-level position in management. I never thought I'd end up here. So I ended up working I mean, here as in a leader of a business, I
Yep.
always envisioned that I'd be, pushing tin somewhere around the world. But I really realized that bringing the games industry and the flight industry together into this new air traffic world was very interesting.
Tell us a little bit about sort of, how, simulation, what kind of, what are the pillars that kind of underpin sort of, simulation, and how is it, using, this idea of kind of gaming, in a kind of work and
Yeah.
professional kind of environment just sounds so fascinating. Unpack that for me a little bit.
So it's serious gaming. We have to enable training and evaluation of people and airspaces and procedures in a safe environment. That means not doing it in a live operation. That's the reason for the raison d'être for what we do. We are a little bit behind compared to some other industries. If we compare ourselves to the flight training industry, they have different classes of simulator up to what's called a level D motion platform, where pilots are training right up to the sharp end of their requirement before they go into the live operation. The air traffic industry is getting there. We're certainly hot on the heels, and it really depends on the how much funding is available is often it, but also the philosophy and the forward thinkingness of the management team that are driving these systems into operation. But it's built on the same technology as any gaming platform. So it's could be Windows, could be Linux. We have off-the-shelf IT products that we use in terms of hardware. There's nothing really fancy there, and we have standard displays. It's that kind of operating environment, an IT environment, which actually reflects the air traffic environment as well. And we build systems that replicate real-world ATM systems, or come as close as you need to come for a training environment in real-world applications. Or we integrate where we work with big OEM providers, the big suppliers in the industry, where they will be deploying their air traffic management systems into a tower or into an en route center, and we will work with them, and we have what we call a stimulation environment. So the controller will sit and look at a real version, an operational version of the software, but the data source is underneath. That's where we're the game engine. So we provide surveillance information, flight plan information, data link information. So that ATM system the controller is looking at and interacting with looks and feels exactly like the real world. But the work that's going on behind is there's a team of people operating and speaking to that individual. So that's where the gaming bit comes in. So,
and gaming's, going through what feels to be like a kind of continued sort of, evolution, disruption, transformation, whatever you kind of call it.
mm-hmm.
Tell me a little bit about sort of how AI and machine learning are transforming kind of the industry. What are the big kind of technology kind of shifts that you're seeing?
Right. So AI is being taken in a very conservative manner within aviation,
Yeah.
within air traffic, which I think is appropriate. We are not using AI today. We're actually at the edge of it, because what we've been waiting to do is to find a decent use case that we think is appropriate for it. We're about to kick something off, which is about how we manage data, so the production of data. One of the challenges is a person wants to sit down and create a training course for a student or a live controller. So typically that might be 30 or 40 hours worth of simulation. So in order to produce normally it's a 1 hour simulation run, they have to think about, well, how do I put that together? I need weather information, I need flight plan information, what kind of conflicts am I trying to create? Will there be emergencies? So there's a whole sort of storyboard that goes on behind each of those scenarios. And in a perfect end state, I would like a controller to be able to sit down and describe what they want into the machine, and the scenario should be ready to go. In terms of live operations, there are a couple of trials out there, but they're very much about presenting options to the controller, not making decisions. So, things like an aircraft being clear of a runway with an alert that goes off, or an aircraft entering a piece of airspace, and a most logical route based on what the system thinks that the controller should instruct the aircraft to do. But they're very much on the early stages at this point.
You mentioned you have a very broad range of different sort of customer segments, groups, military to commercial and so forth, and the size of those planes. The market itself, is enormous. It seems there's huge growth going on.
Yeah.
You talked about 9/11. You throw kind of COVID into the mix, I suppose, in a sense, in terms of what that had as an impact on the industry. But it seems to be really kind of bouncing back now in and going on. Tell me a little bit about sort of what shifts you're seeing in customer expectations.
like every industry, they want, you say, more for less, right?
Right.
Budgets are tight.
Yep.
But also there's a recognition that simulation brings a lot of value. The number of projects that have come up were very slow at the back of COVID. For our business, actually, it was the military customers that kept us alive. Some of them took the advantage to do tech refreshes or new projects. But the civil market is definitely starting to get the pace is definitely picking up now. In terms of where I see the customer expectation going, they have a limit on labor. So there's a shortage of air traffic controllers globally.
Right.
There's a shortage of air traffic management experts globally. There's an even smaller list of people that do what I do, and the demand is higher. So what they're looking for is systems that can do more automation for them. And so we are producing new tools now that allow that to help.
And how global is the market? We were talking before the show started about, you're flying all over the place, particularly here where we're recording in the UAE.
Mm-hmm.
Tell me a little bit about that kind of geographic and market kind of scale perspective.
So for Micronav specifically, we're in, I think, 42 countries now.
Wow.
We're in Mexico, that's the furthest west, and our furthest east is Papua New Guinea. About half of the Western European countries, most of the Middle Eastern countries are using our systems for civil and military operations. We have a presence in Africa. Maldives is a popular destination for people. They did a very interesting project there about upgrading a new runway, and that's an example where our systems can go in and help to facilitate more efficient deployment of things like new runways and new taxiways and so on. And the fact that it's in the Maldives, there was no shortage of volunteers to go to that project. Let me just say,
the secondment prize. I love it. That's fantastic.
Yeah, but Micronav is actually we're about 8 months into the integration of being owned by Indra.
Okay.
Indra is one of the, if not the biggest player in the air traffic management market globally. They're a Spanish company. It's been a fantastic journey for us to integrate with them, and actually their presence is much bigger again. I think they're 180 countries or something like that, so something in that range. And so that's going to really change the game for us.
What a testament to you for coming in with the role of growth, and then taking a business through effectively an acquisition. I mean, that must have been something else.
Yeah, it was good. I learned a lot. You think you know about these things until you go through them, and then you realize there's layers and layers and layers. Of governance and extra things, but it wasn't too difficult. It was logical for both sides. The acquisition was a really good process to go through, as I said, and I believe that Indra is the right place for the business to be. Absolutely.
That's often the kind of rationale for doing these deals, right? In terms of, they've obviously saw real opportunity by bringing you into their organization, and clearly for you, huge potential there in terms of growth. Tell me a little bit about the sort of the skills gaps that you sort of see in the industry, and also in your own organization, and how do you make your teams, what's your philosophy around making your teams future ready?
Investment.
Yeah.
You've got to take time. It's time. And it is a bit about money, and you can't buy experience. So, software engineers are easier to come across because there's universities that produce them. And we are attractive to some guy. There's a certain niche or a certain group of software engineers and things like 3D modelers that come through. The more difficult persons to find are the subject matter experts, where you would take somebody who's an air traffic controller or an air traffic, what's called an ATSEP, an air traffic safety person or an engineer, and pull them in. And then it's trying to leverage somebody who's an expert in air traffic management or air traffic control, but they can also go in and talk about how we put technology together and systems together.
Mm-hmm.
And that takes time. We have a really good team that are very good at what they do. We are looking for more people in that space at the moment, but we acknowledge that to bring somebody out of an air traffic environment and to say, right, now you're in a simulator environment, because they've probably worked with simulators, but they walk into a room, it's all set up and ready to go. They sit down, they do their job, which is their day job anyway, and the technology just works. Well, now we're saying to them, we need you to step into the technology side and understand how that comes together, and the management of data. So, it's time, and you can't buy experience. You have to go and get it. So there's an internal process of bringing somebody in, and we expect them to have basic Windows skills, of course, and standard Office IT skills, etc. But then we have to take them through. So how do you put a simulator together? And there's a training program, which is similar to how we would train an end user, a customer. But because there's so much to the product, it can take quite a lot of time. So that's the most difficult type of person to find in our space and train them. There's limited numbers.
And then, of course, once you've got them, once you've found them, you've got to retain them. You've got to develop them. And you're growing this business, and now through the Indra acquisition, obviously you've now got to move from 42 countries to potentially 180. Like, how do you then sort of maintain that sort of excellence and innovation while you scale globally? There are kind of any particular kind of hints and tips?
That's the $1 million question. Well, Indra's got a very, very good, capable air traffic management engineering capability. So part of what we will do is to upskill some of those engineering teams. But essentially, yeah, we need to grow. We need to hire more people, and it's going to take some time. But we're doing it in a very controlled manner. I'm not one for ballooning a business and then having to let people go. That's inappropriate, and it doesn't sit with me morally. We have an existing customer base that we need to keep happy. So that's kind of the first goal, and then we'll expand as we can based on projects coming down the line. That's the philosophy of how we move forwards. In terms of my first line, I run a very collegiate operation. Mm-hmm. It's quite rare that I will say, guys, I'm making the decision on this. It's usually a conversation that goes on, and for my first line and the directors that sit within it, I trust them. They're good people, and they have to get on and do their jobs. They don't need me in their kitchen all the time. I'm there to help. So my job is to work for the business, not the other way around. That's how I see it.
What about from a kind of mindset perspective? Do you have any kind of go-to sort of philosophies around what you look for in that sense?
I know it's an easy one to say, but you've got to trust the people you work with.
Yeah.
And things don't always go right, but as long as we can be open with each other and honest and fix it as a team, that's the number one thing that I look for beyond the technical skills of the role.
Yeah. When I talk to leaders of businesses, I always like to ask this question because everyone's got a kind of slightly different sort of view on it. But as a leader, in some senses, the buck kind of does stop with you in a sense. What are the kind of metrics that really truly matter to you? And they can be financial or qualitative. And then how do you track the impact? Particularly in a world like simulation and safety and product evolution.
So obviously metrics come, there's always the financials. We have our targets that we want to meet, and we all work in that direction to make that happen. In terms of project deployments, we try and get our project managers to look at the available labor and cost and funding that they have, and try and deliver leaner and faster where appropriate. And also, there's always an opportunity for on-contract growth. So those are relatively simple measures. In terms of leadership and management, I'm all for understanding how people tick. So we use insights where we get all of our staff to go through an evaluation program, so we can work out which color they are and what's your color mix and how do you fit into your teams. So that's part of how we understand how people work. And then also we have an internal way where we have a product where there's an app that our staff use, and they have an anonymous feedback loop to us, which is constant, so we can measure ourselves against other companies. And within that, then I can look at how the different departments within the company are satisfied or not and performing or not, and that allows me to help those managers see where things need to improve. And yeah, it works. I think it's not perfect, but I think it works well.
When you're looking for new folks who've got that right mix, I suppose, in a sense that you sort of just described there, what are you looking for when hiring or promoting team members? How do you foster that kind of culture that supports experimentation and loyalty?
I'm looking for people that don't need to be babysat. Okay, so everyone needs training, everybody needs some support and guidance. But our job is to go into the field, into customer sites all over the world, and to make those customers, make those systems work for the customers and make the customers happy. So we need people that are independent, able to make decisions without necessarily, I always say I'd rather you ask for forgiveness than permission if you think it's the right idea, right? So it's looking for independent people that are willing to travel and go and spend time with customers, but also that they get satisfaction from the results, because I always say I'm only happy when the customer's happy, when the end user's happy, and so that's the measure. finding people that have that same outlook, which is we're not just there to turn up and deliver some IT and maybe it works. No, we're there to enable a business critical platform that will have safety critical implications, and so they have to have that mindset.
That whole concept of trust. Can you think of a a situation where you've been innovating the product, or dealing with a kind of customer kind of request or need, where you've sort of seen that come through in flying colors from your team, and you've gone, wow, that's what I'm talking about. That's what I'm trying to set.
A recent example is one of our engineers went to site with a project manager, and we thought that we understood how the customer wanted to have their system configured in terms of the displays and the layout and the general ergonomics of it. And he just took charge and did what they needed them to do and made them happy. So that's an example of, they know that people understand that there's bandwidth in the way that we operate. They have to make good decisions for the customer for the right reasons, because sometimes you can have a requirement on a piece of paper, but it's not until you get into an operation and actually see what's required. We always say that we're experts in simulation and air traffic control, but we never know what your system and your particular air traffic environment looks like. The customer is the expert in that, so we have to be able to be fluid and to make changes, and our staff have to adapt.
I love it. This goes back to you're empowering people, right? Mm-hmm. So looking at the market, looking at where the world is now, and we touched on kind of AI, and that was really interesting. Kind of current position that you kind of face. What sort of trends, and they can be technical or they can be regulatory or geopolitical, do you sort of see shaping the next 3 to 5 years of Micronav and aviation and simulation, and how you kind of getting Micronav ready for that?
So there are programs out there like Cesar and NextGen, which are kind of setting the roadmaps for aviation in general across North America and Europe.
Tell us a little bit about that for someone who doesn't know the industry as well as you do.
So the Single European Sky is something that is the European member states all contribute to, and they have very detailed planning about how the aviation sector needs to evolve, and that cuts down through all the different stakeholders, and air traffic is one of them. There's a very similar program in the US called Next Generation.
Right.
And then sitting above that, there's the ICAO guidance, and there's the Global Air Navigation Plan, and something that's called ASBU, which is the Aviation System Block Upgrade. And that's been in play for quite a number of decades. So the idea is that we're enabling upgrades to sectors, geographic sectors, so that systems harmoniously work together, and aircraft can talk to systems, and it goes on, much further than just the air traffic and flight environment, but all the ground operations and so on.
Wow!
So that's moving all the time, and we try to make sure that we identify for example, new types of data link capability or new methods of air traffic operations, where you want continuous climb or continuous descent or curved approaches, or those kind of new features that are coming in the ATC world. So we have to stay ahead of the curve on that where possible, and then we also work with our customers. Some of our customers will be doing things for the first time. They'll be setting a new standard in air traffic control, and then they work with us through a project, and they will fund some development. So that's how we try and keep ahead of the curve. Sometimes it can be a challenge, but we're very confident that our system today is extremely capable for general operations, and we look forward to these exciting challenges. Sometimes we do get stumped, and you go, "Ooh," but there's a great team of engineers and experts, and given effort and time, we seem to make it work. So.
And geographically, here we are in UAE, and we were just talking before the show started about the new airport being built here. What is it? It's going to be serving 250 million passengers by 2030.
Yep.
Tell me a little bit about sort of the parts of the world that you're kind of really excited about, sort of getting kind of your teeth into and taking Micronav there.
Well, obviously, the Middle East is very important to us. We have a very loyal customer base here, and we love doing work here. So we work for Dubai, we work for Abu Dhabi airports, both, and ATC units, and Qatar, and good representation in Saudi Arabia. But places that are moving are Southeast Asia. So Indonesia and the Philippines, we're watching very closely. We have customers in Indonesia. We're not in the Philippines yet, but they seem to have really turned a corner in our if you look at the population density and the number of projects that need to go on there, simulation is going to be one of the cornerstones of success. So yeah, that's where our focus is at the moment. And obviously the US, it's all coming out in the press about the pressure that the FAA is under.
Yeah.
And it's a big task to keep that number of controllers current and to have enough coming through the pipe. So we're hoping to get into the US, which is the one place we're not in the continental United States.
Yeah.
But we are hoping that projects will be upcoming there that we can get involved with, because we think we can add a lot of value.
Well, that's a watch this space comment there. I look forward to hearing more about that. So I suppose in a sense, sort of like, we've talked a little bit about talent and sort of the gaps and the needs, kind of in this sector. Going back to to the beginning, I suppose, if someone wanted to kind of build a career at the kind of intersection that we've sort of talked about so far, looking back, like, what's the one piece of advice you'd give them?
Always say yes. But you have to have a hygiene factor about what you'll accept. But, for me personally, if I'd just gone down this, I'm going to do this one thing path, I probably would have achieved it, but I would have never ended up where I am today. And so I always say, give everything a go. Always be prepared to roll your sleeves up. And if you're going to be a leader of anything, never give a job to someone you wouldn't do yourself. That's a hard rule. I
love that one. And I want you to give me an example, thinking back about the last time that you said yes, and it was a validation of what you just said there.
Probably changes in the organization. There was a bit of a restructure, and also taking some control of some parts of the organization that I may not have done in the past.
Yeah.
If I can help with any part of the bid process, or if I can help with, often it's dealing with customers. If there's a difficult problem, it'll come to me, and I'll do my best to facilitate the right people in the organization to make it better.
Because sometimes yes is actually the hardest sort of answer, isn't it? It's sometimes easier to sometimes just sort of say no because of what the implications of the yes can potentially mean, I suppose. And that's what I was getting from you when you were saying always say yes. It's because you get an opportunity, you go, that's going to kind of take me outside of my comfort zone.
I suppose when we think about things that I've done recently to say yes is probably maybe a better example is R&D. We've got an internal R&D team that traditionally would have been quite strictly managed by a product manager, which we do have a product manager, but in this example, we decided to let some really talented young engineers who are fresh out of university, led by a more senior engineer, go and help to design and actually work a little bit free-flowing in sprints to move us into the ability to control data and how data is collected and how it's analyzed. And I think somebody that's maybe a little bit more focused on the air traffic and traditional management style would have been a hindrance to them. So an example of saying, I trust you guys, yes, it's cost us money. We've invested quite a lot of money, but actually the results have been really surprising and have opened up a lot of really good critical thinking about where we're going to go with this product in the future now that we've enabled fresh blood with new ideas that we don't have at our generation to actually think about, well, this is how we should be doing it with the new tech. So that's a recent example.
Okay, look, I'm going to give you like some real kind of quick fire, kind of fun kind of questions, I suppose. Just first thing that comes into your head, okay? Matrix upload. If you could instantly download one skill or area of expertise, just like Keanu, what would it be?
Languages.
What language?
Today, Arabic.
There we go. Love it. Dream passenger, living or dead, who would you most like to sit beside on a flight?
Probably Winston Churchill.
Nice one. That's great. On the red eye.
Yeah.
Okay. So, for someone sort of so immersed and fascinated by technology, what sci-fi tech do you wish existed today?
Probably transporters from Star Trek. I spend too much time on aircraft, which is strange because I know I'm in the industry of moving aircraft, but sometimes I just want to be able to go, I'm home and not have a 12-hour flight, So.
And that's a great link actually to my next question, which is teleportation destination. You get one free instant jump using that new device.
Okay.
Where are you going and what do you bring?
I'm going to Palau and I'm bringing all my diving gear with me.
You're on the flight. Or you're driving. What's the ultimate playlist or song? What's on full blast?
Probably something by Metallica.
Great choice. And finally, Marvel power of choice. If you could borrow one Marvel superpower, what would you choose?
Definitely Superman's flying abilities. No question.
Greg, it's been a real pleasure. Thank you so much for your time today.
It's been a great conversation. Thank you very much.